We've put in the new office park here in Chautauqua, here by the riverside. Lovely area that we have here. Love the road that's going nearby. But, I am wasting this entire side of the road that could have been zoned for something else. And honestly, we could have put something else where these trees and flowers are instead of trees and flowers. We could have crammed this in with more commercial, maybe a restaurant. I've got this parking place that's stuck right next to this other office building, and we have to ask, is this the right way to do it? Is this what we want? Super dense urban environment, or do we want things spread out where people will enjoy themselves more? This is a very interesting economic question, that of full economic utility. Economics is more than just the accounting. It's more than just saying this land has a certain dollar value, therefore we need to build certain size buildings with certain numbers of floors, etc., to maximize the land value use and charge this much for rent. Yeah, all that accounting, that's part of economics. The other part of economics is what other things do we get out of our choices? Our choices should be determined not just by the accounting overall value, but other intangibles that make us happy. There are some measures of economics. I know Nepal has actually switched over to a gross happiness product to measure the quality of life in their country. And I think that's a good idea. Do we limit pollution? I do have, for example, on this side of the town, a trash processing facility and a coal plant. They are running green, but their pollution extends just to the edge here. They're not so close to the residential area that they'll cause a problem. There is a bit of a pollution overlap on the office building, but the office building is in a closed environment. We should be okay. It's whatever it's grandfathered in, but definitely will be better for the folks who are over here that it is far enough away so they're not impacted by the pollution radius. Now, if I was interested in maximizing total population and total land value, I'd have everything crammed in a weird way. But this town wants to retain its small town charm, and as such, we've got to look at things other than the accounting gross land value before we put things in. We need to consider parks, we need to consider the environment, how many trees are we putting in there? What about access to businesses, to eateries, to places where they're going to go during lunch? Should there be housing nearby these offices? And that's a pretty important question because there's a lot of people in these offices. If we put housing here, does that reduce the demand for parking? Or does that mean we keep the parking lot, but we put it in a different location and everybody lives nearby and walks to work? I don't know the answers there, but I do know this. Not everybody wants to live in a suburban home with an expansive yard and people that they have to, lots of land they have to maintain. They may prefer just living in a condo nearby other people with services and businesses close by that, even if it's a hot day, they could walk to it. There's not that much distance they'd have to cover outside of the AC, or maybe there's an underground air-conditioned tunnel. Who knows? But not everybody wants to live in a suburban home. That's not everyone's dream house. So maybe if we put some high-density housing near to this area, that might be attractive to people who work and live here. Or maybe people just move in there and they live there and they work somewhere else in town, but they just like living near the other amenities that will be nearby. Another part of economics is when we think about complementary goods or complementary services. We have all of these offices going here and they directly provide more employment for people in town. But they're also going to provide employment for businesses that are nearby supporting them. Restaurants, office supplies, and so forth. If we put residential here, those restaurants will do more than just breakfast and lunch. They could do a dinner trade. And there may be other things like a theater or a few clubs. It becomes a very mixed sort of uses here where we've got businesses on the one hand, but then we would also have maybe an entertainment area right around here. So these are the things we want to consider, not just the pure dollar value. When I started playing City Skylines, I kind of played with the dollar value, just cramming in as much as I could, get the population as big as I could, get the weekly income as large as I could, and then boom, I felt like I had won. And I was having fun that way, but I can't play that way anymore. I like it to be where my cities have a better life in them. And one could say that it's a fantasy. Sure. It's a fantasy as much as Baldur's Gate 3 where I cast magic spells, or Victoria 3 where I run an entire country and don't really have people arguing with me. It's nice. And if I can do that here in City Skylines, I'll do that. The fact that we have this nice road here, and we have these lovely palm trees, and somebody who's on the top floor of this building could conceivably, oops, let's get that there, okay, right around here we'll say, could conceivably look out and see a beautiful river around the area, and have a lovely view that they could step out and start walking up this tree-lined road. It's a narrow road, I agree, but there's a lot of them in this area that'll help give service to it. But just enjoy this area, both the physical beauty and the visual beauty. And having an 8-story parking garage rammed up right next to another building is maybe a bit too urban as we pass through the trees as I rotate around. Maybe what we want to have happen here is this parking garage still exists, and with it being 8 floors, we can pack a lot of cars in there, but scoot it over some more, put some trees between it and the other buildings, have some pedestrian walkways that connect it to the other areas. That might be more desirable. Let's see about that. There we go. I moved it over by 3. Just seemed like a good enough number. Let's put in those walkways now. I'll go with park path with decorations. All right, got that side. We'll have another one go over here and put one behind it just in case. We'll extend it there. And one on this side of the building just in case as well. Now, we don't have any crosswalks, so I'll have to do something creative with this road in order to get them there. I think there's another tool I could use that'll put the crosswalks in, but I don't ever use it. So I'll do the other one that I know how to do. And that trick is to take the road and stop it and then go get a different road. There we go. I switched from the 2-lane road with bike lanes and trees to the 2-lane road with median and bike lanes. And that got me the crosswalks where I needed them to be to line up with the pedestrian paths. Doing that on the other side, go to here, go to there, get the other one and drop it in. There we go. Pedestrian crosswalks right where I need them, and the bike lanes just keep going. Yes, it does look like they widen out here and then they widen back in, or narrow back in, sorry, but well, that's just how the roads go. I'm happy with that. Now that I have my parking garage with a little more room in between, I can do a few things with this. First is to fill it up with flowers. Flowers are really nice. Second is I'm going to add some trees. Let's get some medium horse chestnuts and let's put them in a line. We'll start here, go all the way there, and click. Drop to ground level and have a look, and okay. I don't feel so bad that there's a parking garage there now. I've got these trees, these lovely trees nearby that are able to, well, make me feel a little more comfortable there. And we can walk over here, cross the street, there's more trees here, there's another building there, and yeah, now we've got a better area. So if it's better to look at, what's the accounting benefit? Because it's always going to come back to that. Even though we like to talk a good game about making people happier and feeling better, the net result is if it doesn't result in more money, they're not going to continue with it. But I'd like to think that if people are working in a happier place, if the office environment is inviting, they're going to be fine with working in an office instead of working from home. By making it look attractive, it's also a very good chance that they can recruit and retain good employees. And that's better in the long run if you don't have to keep training people and retraining people and hiring people. The human resources churn is real and it's painfully expensive. If we can recruit and retain, then we avoid that cost that goes with having to retrain everybody and offboard and onboard and all that business. That goes away. We just steady as she goes, keep the people working that are working, and if they stay happy in this location, then we're happy to provide those services. Too often, I see firms that decide the short-term gain is all that they're about, and they forget to consider the long-term costs. If you play a long game, economically, you may not make as much profit in the short run, but the accounting is going to look much, much better in the long run. So what's next? Well, I need to put in those little eateries and get some of that high-density residential that I was talking about so we can have some people live nearby the places that they work. Okay, I put in the residential and the other stuff with it, the commercial, and I put in a church and a little park here. The residential runs along this side. It's all high density. I've modified them so they'd have the right number of occupants and added lots of trees around them. Again, we want this to be a place where people feel happy to live, and they have access to good parking nearby. Commercial starts over here. Hey, we got a fun time fast food restaurant next to the park and the church, and then some more places to eat and drink and get gas. And yeah, it's coming together. The whole place reminds me a lot of National Harbor in Maryland. It's a place that's got real pricey, and maybe it's a little more dense than it needs to be, but it is very walkable, and there's plenty of places to work and to eat and to shop nearby. It's a fun place to be. So that's what I've got going on here, is I just take a look, pivot around, look it over. Maybe I should hold still for a little while and get to there we go. All right. Yeah, a nice little pan there. The church spire over there doesn't hurt. Now, adding to this area with all the housing, we will want to put in some schools. Those will probably come into this area here. We've got this particular asset. It fills out the whole area here. You can see where the flowers are. That's where the building isn't. But there's this green space that we could put something on. So I could have this road go extended further, then build another one along this side and start putting like a high school and other facilities in over in this area to service the people that are living here. At the same token, we could add in more of these buildings for an office park kind of feel. I've got this area available. Should have some more offices in there, and it'll all be rather nice and livable as we expand our IT area. But of course, we're not looking at this land as simply every single bit of it needs to be built up. The city council has the power to say, we will allow so many square feet of land to be built and the towers can be so high, but we require so many other feet of park area, of green space. And by making those requirements, the developers are, they're required to put in the trees, to put in the greenery that makes people happier. Because if we look at all this, what is it that makes us happy about looking at this street? Is it the building? Or is it the greenery? Or is it the building with the greenery? Well, I'm pretty sure it's not just the building. It's either the greenery or the buildings with the greenery. Now, they can't all be like this. As beautiful as this area is, it's not livable. It's not livable because we can't put everybody in a tree house, for one thing. We have rules against that. It's just, this is wonderful natural beauty. Everybody loves to walk through it, but we have to strike a balance between the natural beauty and the buildings in order to create spaces that people find enjoyable to live in. And while I think I've done that for my low density residential, I want to do that also for the high-density residential. Stack the buildings up a little bit taller so we have more space for the greenery that goes around here. This is still going to be high-value land, no question about it. The buildings are going to be slightly taller here, but they're not going to be packed in so closely that we don't have room for anything else. We're going to have room for trees, parks, schools, churches, service buildings, places of fun, and that's going to make the people happier here. So even though the accountants are going nuts trying to figure out how are we going to pay for all this, that's okay. We will be able to pay for all this. Let's not get crazy with the profits and forget the long-term values that we want to have for our town. And those values include great livability. Economics is more than accounting. Remember that as you build out your cities.